Hello, Earthlings. Good morning. How are you today? Welcome to First Contact Radio. I hope all is well in your world. All right, today on the show we're going to address, well, you know what? Let's just keep it a surprise. How about that? We're going to start off with space weather. See what's going on out there in the cosmos around us. We've got our solar wind, 424.9 kilometers per second, so we could see from what it was yesterday, which was in the 300s, it's picked up a bit. Now our planetary K index, remember this goes up to 9. Today we're at a 2, and the possibility within the next 24 hours is that it's going to be in the 3 range. So that's still relatively, it's less than half. So we're not really in the place there of looking at any major concerns. And our forecasts down here show us that M-class flares are really low. X-class flares are pretty much non-existent, and geomagnetic storms are very low as well. Now, some of the things to be looking at, here's one article here. It's talking about the lunar ionosphere. We talk about the ionosphere of the planet, and here's an interesting one. How can the world with no air have an ionosphere? Well, somehow the moon has done it. Researchers have been puzzled by the lunar ionosphere for more than 40 years. With the recent publication of a paper in Planetary and Space Science, the mystery may have been solved. So, okay, we got this story here. Let's check, see where this leads us. Go down the rabbit hole here. All right, mystery of the lunar ionosphere. Lunar researchers have begun struggling with the mystery for years, but what is an ionosphere? Every terrestrial planet with an ionosphere has one, or with an atmosphere, has one. High above the planet's rocky surface, where the atmosphere meets the vacuum of space, ultraviolet rays from the sun break apart atoms of air. This creates a layer of ionized gas called an ionosphere. Here on Earth, the ionosphere has a big impact on communications and navigation. For instance, it reflects radio waves, allowing shortwave radio operators to bounce transmissions over the horizon for long-range communications. The ionosphere also bends and scatters signals from GPS satellites, sometimes causing your GPS tracker to misread your position. The first convincing evidence of an ionosphere around the moon came in 1970s from the Soviet lunar probes 1922. Circling the moon at close range, the orbiters sensed a layer of charged material extending a few tens of kilometers above the lunar surface, containing as many as 1,000 electrons per cubic centimeter, 1,000 times more than any theory could explain. Radio astronomers have also found hints of lunar ionosphere when distant radio sources pass behind the moon's limb. The idea of an airless moon having an ionosphere didn't make much sense, but the evidence seemed compelling. As a matter of fact, the moon isn't quite as airless as most people think. Small amounts of gas created by the radioactive decay seep out of the lunar interior. Meteoroids and the solar wind also blast atoms off the moon's surface. The resulting shroud of gas is so thin, however, that many researchers refuse to call it an ionosphere, preferring instead the term exosphere. The density of the lunar exosphere is about 100 billion times less than that of the Earth, not enough to support an ionosphere as dense as the ones on the lunar probes sensed. For 40 years, the moon's ionosphere remained a mystery until Tim Stubbs of the Goddard Space Flight Center published a possible solution earlier this year. The answer, he proposes, moon dust. Stubbs, a 30-something scientist who wasn't even born when the moon ionosphere was discovered, read the accounts of Apollo 15 astronauts who reported seeing a strange glow over the moon's horizon. Many researchers believe the astronauts were seeing moon dust. The moon is an extremely dusty place, naturally surrounded by a swarm of dust grains. Think Pigpen and Charlie Brown. When these floating grains catch the light of the rising sun, they create a glow along the horizon. Stubbs and colleagues realized that floating dust could provide the answer. UV rays from the sun hit the grains and ionize them. According to the calculations, the process produced enough change to create the observed ionosphere. Ionosphere made of dust instead of gas is new to planetary science. No one knows how it will behave at different times of the night or different phases of the solar cycle, or how it might affect future radio communications and navigations on the moon. All right. So even though we've had these missions to the moon, this is the first time they're figuring this out. So, all right. Now, and we also see that there's this sun filament that it's making reference to. I think we talked about this yesterday, and this is the big band right here. And this is one of the concerns, not just this particular thing, but the sun. You hear a lot of talk about these times that we're heading into. There's going to be very strong solar activity, and this solar activity is going to be somewhat challenging to the Earth. We have movies about it. Knowing was about that, and I believe there's a couple others out there. So there's a lot of things coming from outside in that people are concerned about these days. So there you have it. That's our space weather for the moment. We're going to jump away over to Dirk Bradshaw. And Dirk has a story for us today. Let me go ahead and pull this up for you. Where are we at here? All right. Dirk has a story for us today. I believe it is about vaccine. So Dirk, over to you.
Flying high above the planet Earth, this is the Cosmic News with Dirk Bradshaw. I am Dirk Bradshaw. Well, in this interview with Dr. Maurice Hillman, reveals some astounding revelations. He admits that Merck Drug Company vaccine for polio had been deliberately contaminated with SB40, a cancer-causing monkey virus from 1953 to 1963. So, who is this Dr. Maurice Hillman? For those who think that Dr. Hillman was just another crackpot, think again. He was, and still is, the leading vaccine pioneer in the history of vaccines. He's developed more than 36 vaccines, more than any scientist in history, and was the developer of Merck's vaccine program. That's what we have for you, boys and girls. You'll want to stay tuned, because you definitely want to know this.
And if you ask our leaders today, this is what they will say. I can neither confirm or deny. I can neither confirm or deny. I can neither confirm or deny. What's up with their lives?
The mother of Ebola is the Marburg virus that first broke out in 3 vaccine production facilities in 3 different parts of the world simultaneously in 1967, killing 7 people and injuring another 31. This grave risk came from the fact that the monkey supplier, Litton Bionetics, was also a leading biological weapons contractor for the military and the CIA by 1969. With military and White House influence, no one would dare declare Bionetics' negligence and liability in any outbreak. Listen now to the voice of the world's leading vaccine expert, Dr. Maurice Hillman, chief of the Merck Pharmaceutical Company's vaccine division, relay this problem he was having with imported monkeys. He best explains the origin of AIDS, but what you are about to hear was cut from any public disclosures.
And I think that vaccines have to be considered the bargain basement technology for the 20th century.
50 years ago, when Maurice Hillman was a high school student in Miles City, Montana, he hoped he might qualify as a management trainee for the local J.C. Penney store. Instead, he went on to pioneer more breakthroughs in vaccine research and development than anyone in the history of American medicine. Among the discoveries he made at Merck are vaccines for mumps, rubella, and measles.
Tell me how you found SB40 in the polio vaccine.
Well, that was a Merck thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I came to Merck, and I was going to develop vaccines. And we had wild viruses in those days. Remember the wild monkey kidney viruses and so forth? And I finally, after 6 months, gave up. I said that you cannot develop vaccines with these damn monkeys. We're finished. And if I can't do something about it, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to try it. So I went down to see Bill Mann at the zoo in Washington, D.C. And I told Bill Mann, I said, look, I got a problem. I don't know what the hell to do. Bill Mann is a very bright guy. I said, these lousy monkeys are picking it up while being stored in the airports in transit at these loading, offloading, loading. He said, very simple. He said, you go ahead, get your monkeys out of West Africa, get the African green, bring them into Madrid, unload them there. There are no other traffic through there for animals. Fly them into Philadelphia, pick them up. Or fly them into New York and pick them up right off the airplane. So I brought African greens in. I didn't know we were importing AIDS virus at the time. And
it was you who introduced AIDS virus to the country. It was you who introduced AIDS virus to the country. It was you who introduced AIDS virus to the country.
became
a real story.
became
a real story.
became
a real story.
Convert will do to Velvet vaccine. Convert will do to Velvet vaccine. Convert will do to Velvet vaccine.
So what he did, he brought in, we brought in those monkeys. Now we had those. And this was the solution. Because those monkeys didn't have the wild viruses. But we had all of these...
Why didn't the greens have the wild viruses since they came from Africa?
Because they weren't, they weren't being infected in these group holding things with all the other 40 different viruses.
But they had the ones they brought from the jungle, though.
Yeah, they had those, but there were relatively few. What you do is you have a gang housing, you're going to have an epidemic transmission of infection in a confined space.
Oh, is that the problem?
So, anyway, the greens came in. Now we had these, and then we're taking our seed stocks to clean them up, and God, now I'm discovering new viruses. So I said, Judas Priest. Well, I got an invitation from the Sister Kinney Foundation, which was the opposing foundation, and that was the live virus.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they had jumped on Sabin's bandwagon. And they had asked me to come down and give a talk at the Sister Kinney Foundation meeting. And I said, it was an international meeting. I thought, God, what am I going to talk about? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the detection of non-detectable viruses as a topic.
There were those who didn't want a live virus vaccine. They concentrated. The National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis concentrated all its efforts on getting more and more people to use the killed virus vaccine, while they were supporting me for research on the live virus vaccine.
So now I got to have something, that's going to attract attention. So I thought, gee, that damn SV40, that damn vacuolating agent that we have, I'm going to just pick that particular one. That virus has got to be in vaccines, and it's got to be in Sabin's vaccine, so I quickly tested it. Sure enough, it was in there. And
I'll be damned.
so now, so I go ahead and...
So you just took stocks of Sabin's vaccine off the shelf here at Merck?
Yeah, well, that had not been made at Merck. It was made at Merck.
You were making it for Sabin at this point?
Yeah, it was made before I came.
Yeah, but at this point, Sabin is still just doing these massive field trials. Okay.
In Russia and so forth. So I go down and I talked about the detection of non-detectable viruses. And I told Albert...
But at this point, Sabin is still just doing these massive field trials. Okay.
In Russia and so forth. So I go down and I talked about the detection of non-detectable viruses. And I told Albert, I said, listen, Albert, I said, you and I are good friends. But I said, I'm going to go down there and you're going to get upset. But I'm going to talk about a virus that's in your vaccine. Now, you're going to get rid of the virus. Don't worry about it. You're going to get rid of it. But, so of course, Albert was very upset with me. And
What did he say?
Well, he said basically that this is just another obfuscation that is going to upset vaccines. And I said, well, you're absolutely right. But I said, we have a new era here. We have a new era of a detection. And the important thing is to get rid of these viruses.
Why would he call it an obfuscation if it was a virus that was contaminating the vaccine?
Because, there are 40 different viruses in these vaccines anyway that we were inactivating. And...
But you weren't inactivating his, though.
That's correct. No, that's right. But yellow fever vaccine had leukemia virus in it, and, this is in the days of very crude science. So anyway, I went down and talked to him, and I said, well, why are you concerned about it? I said, well, I'll tell you what, I said, I have a feeling in my bones that this virus is different. I don't know why to tell you this, but I've been around biology a long time. I just think this virus may have some long-term effects. And he said, what? I said, cancer.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead.
No. I said, Albert, I said, you probably think I'm nuts, but I just have that feeling. Well, in the meantime, we had taken this virus and put it into hamsters. So we had this meeting, and that was sort of the topic of the day, and the jokes that were going around was, gee, we would win the Olympics because the Russians would all be loaded down with tumors. This is where the vaccine was being tested. This was
right. Right.
So, and it really destroyed the meeting. You know, it was a big international.
Yeah, right.
So it was sort of the topic. You know. Anyway.
Was this the Cancer Society meeting in New York?
No, this was the Sister Kennedy.
Oh, the Sister Kennedy. Right.
And Del Becco got up and said that he foresaw problems with these kinds of agents.
Why didn't this get out in the press?
Well, I guess it did. I don't remember. We had no press release on it, obviously. You don't go out. This is a scientific affair within the scientific community. This is a scientific affair within the scientific community.
An historic victory over a dread disease is dramatically unfolded at the University of Michigan. Here, scientists usher in a new medical age with the monumental reports that prove the Salk vaccine against crippling polio to be a sensational success. It's a day of triumph for 40-year-old Dr. Jonas E. Salk, developer of the vaccine. He arrives with Basil O'Connor, head of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which financed the tests. Hundreds of reporters and scientists from all over the nation gather for the momentous announcement.
It was too much of a show. There was too much Hollywood. There was too much exaggeration. And the impression in 1957 that was, in 1954, that was given was that the problem had been solved, that polio had been conquered.
But anyway, we knew it was in our seed stock for making the vaccine. That virus, you see, it's 1 in 10,000 particles is not inactivated by formaldehyde. It was good science at the time because that was what you did. You didn't worry about these wild viruses.
So you discovered it wasn't being inactivated in the Salk vaccine?
Correct. So then, the next thing you know is 3-4 weeks after that, I found that there were tumors popping out in these hamsters.
Despite AIDS and leukemia suddenly becoming pandemic from wild viruses, Hilleman said this was good science at that time. So imagine what bad science might yield. Science directed for profit and population control by the military, medical, petrochemical, pharmaceutical cartel.
Oh, man, I can't believe it's over. Where does the time go? Well, I see the fat lady's off the stage. She's looking right at me. It's time for me to go put her to bed. I hate goodbyes. So instead I'm going to say, until we meet again, I'm Dirk Bradshaw for the Cosmic News. Wake up. This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk. That is interesting story there, and I don't quite understand the laughter of the reporters behind it. Maybe it's just their way of dealing with some sort of information that is like that. All right, moving right along, UFO news. Here we go. Well, let's get to the news. That was the space weather. All right. First story here comes to us from a UFO caught on traffic cam in Virginia on November 3rd. Fast unknown bright object recorded with traffic cam near Mount Trashmore in Virginia on November 3rd, 2011. Watching news on local channel WAVY-TV 10, apparent at 5:30 a.m., UFO appeared to be heading towards the camera, then goes off the camera and appears traveling opposite direction with the trail. Very unnerving and goosebumps appear to travel off the horizon with great speed. All right, what you're going to see here is you're going to see something. You can see part of it right here. It's going to zip down in this area here. So keep your eye up in this part of the screen. It goes by pretty quick once you see it. There you go. That was the extent of it. Again, it goes by really quick. All right, so what was that? Was that a UFO? Was that maybe a meteor? Nothing came that really any comments about what that was or further follow-up, but that was in Virginia. Now, our next sighting here, this story comes to us out of from the Examiner, and this is Tracy Pierce. It says, early in the morning of November 11, 2011, a 38-year-old United States resident witnessed an amazing UFO fleet in the skies over California. The UFO was visible at sunrise in the city of Victorville, located in the high desert. The witness documented the UFO sighting on the video that can launch on the left side of the screen and posted it on J. Fern 11's YouTube channel several days later with the following description. Recorded skylights for the second day in a row at sunrise in Victorville. Recorded on 11/11/11, have gone back since and nothing appears anymore. The video lasts less than 1 minute. Fortunately, the footage is relatively clear and the UFO barely moved throughout the time. All right, so let's take a look at what this is. Again, you can follow all these links from our page, firstcontactradio.com, right-hand side UFO News. And here you can already see a gathering right there in the middle. Uh-oh. All right, looks like we're going to have to go over to here. There we go. So it looks like we have 5 different objects there, just stationary in the sky. You can tell they don't really appear to be moving because they're over the same thing here. They're just sitting. So if these were balloons, would they all be in the same position? Is this an object where everything's all connected together? Quite interesting indeed. But there you go. That was over Victorville in California. All right, our next story comes to us here. Remember how we just recently, had the announcement the White House made about UFOs, that there weren't any UFOs, right? Well, they forgot about something. They forgot about the fact that there was a UFO that took place in sighting in 52 right over their own house. So this reporter is going to give you a brief analysis of this. I want you to hear.
On the 1952 incident over D.C., listen to this guy with an authoritative voice in a clip we found somewhere in the depths of the World Wide Web. It's got black and white video and everything.
At 11:40 p.m. on Saturday, July 19th, 1952, an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport spotted 7 blips in a corner of the radar scope. They were moving at 100 miles per hour and were heading for the Capitol. No aircraft were known to be in the area. Jet interceptors were scrambled to investigate the UFOs, but within moments, the radar blips had disappeared. When the jets landed, the UFOs returned.
Well, Phil Larson of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Facts and evidence can be an inconvenient thing, can't they? You say you have no credible evidence of extraterrestrial life on Earth. I say you don't have YouTube and a guy with a soothing, deep voice. Expect a new petition on your desk by day's end. That's Zeitgeist for today.
Okay, so yet again, I know this is going to come to a shock to all of you, but yet again, the White House is not being honest with you. I know, they don't do it very often. They're usually a very truthful organization. Isn't it a shame that we're living in a country where that's what we have come to understand of our government, that they're not honest with us? We know what's going on out there. We know about sightings like this. It's been around for years. It's not like this is something they couldn't have checked for themselves. 1952, that's been a long time. Yet they will still come out and they will still say, no UFOs, no evidence. Very irresponsible of them. But you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to cover for all the other administrations who said there weren't UFOs, because then it makes them look bad. It makes them look like liars. So that's part of the problem. They're all covering for each other. Lies, lies, and more lies. Now here's an article. I'm not going to read this whole article. I'm going to just get you into it, and I'm going to leave it for you to read. But this is a pretty interesting one. It says Alien, ET, UFO Metaphysics of the Immortals, Mind Over Matter, Lesson 1. This is by Teresa Thorogood, I believe it was. Make sure. Teresa Thurmond, all right. And goes on to state, Mortals and Immortals, the mask, the mirror, the image, and the imagination of us all as extraterrestrials created from stardust. I am an extraterrestrial immortal that has information to share. As an oracle on Earth, you tell me. This is a lesson for us all to know about sharing a journey and a path on this planet. We were all given a body, mind, spirit. There are laws that make us who we are and how we must travel in order to pass chaos. We, who are on this planet, share in the making of our man-made laws, while nature and the laws of physics are shared, whether we realize it or not. Now is the time we shall begin our real future extraterrestrial journey. This one article is to remind us of how to go back and refresh our memories of that which was there in our paths all along. The following has been presented to many of my readers before the reason. We shall review the below because it is important in the future. Therefore, please read the entire article once again to learn, to become more aware of the extraterrestrial being, since the data is now past 11/11/11. Thank you. Light and love, TJ. Well, we're not going to share in the future of the spiritual sciences, the ancient aliens, ancestor mysteries. We share our true seekers and light workers to meet in the equal and opposite energy for all the connected to this planet in the universe. We shall now recognize nature and that the magnetic forces are much more important to our existence as a species than we realized in the past. The future brains of our children will learn more than ever we thought possible. Time and information has speeded up the process of our entire species accelerating. We shall learn that when we go forward in time and space, we must be aligned with all that is of the positive and creative process. If we are not aligned with that, which we are supposed to participate in, then we meet resistance, as the negative flow of energy and essence that exists in all things we shall see in this lifetime. By using our alien ET beliefs, logic, training, and counseling in the future, we can all share more of our ET experiences and UFO sightings with others in the future. What we shall learn is to discover freedom to go anywhere and do anything we so desire if we put forth the creative process as a passion that requires devotion to discipline in space-time, which all has to agree with the universe flow of energy and essence. All right, so just get you going with it. The rest is up there for you to read through. That's our UFO news for today. I'll be right back, and we're going to get into some we'll get into some government conspiracies and cover-ups and things of that nature. Kind of stuff we like to do, right? I'll be back. What if our government was responsible for some of the greatest crimes against this nation? Would you really want to know? These are big questions, but these questions deserve answers. It's time to demand the truth.
People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of them.
9/11 was an inside job. Kennedy was killed by the CIA. Jimmy Carter saw a UFO. Answers to secrets you need to know. So wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. 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 Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Patriots arise. It's time to demand the truth.
All right. That song you just heard is called Wake Up. And that was me. It's Poetry. And I wonder if I had written that song before I went off to Guantanamo Bay, if they would still let me come over there. I don't know. Anyway, the song's available for free download, and you can download it at our page, firstcontactradio.com. Just look down the page, you'll see it. All right. Now, one of the things that we need to do during these times is we need to wake up. The reason I play that song over and over is to get you to understand that there's a problem that we're not addressing. We're kind of walking through life asleep. You know, we're allowing things to happen in our lives and we're not paying attention. And because we're not paying attention, things are going on that we don't like. And we wake up to find out that things are going on. Injustices in the world, lies are happening, people are getting killed, wars are going on, and people are become outraged. You know, we have all these movements around the world, these Occupy movements. They're not just happening because people have nothing better to do. They're happening because people are waking up and they don't know how to express what they feel because it's been bottled up for so long. You know, for a lot of individuals, conspiracy theorists, those who've been preparing and studying and learning what's going on, these events are really no surprise. But to those who are hearing for the first time that which has been known for a long time by others, it's a shock to the system. And they're reacting, that kind of knee-jerk reaction, and they're going out there and they're being part of these protests, these riots, all of these things that are taking place on both sides of the fence. Police are reacting one way, protesters are acting another way. All the rights that people have in the situation are getting thrown out because there's a whole new ingredient of emotion that is thrown into the mix. Now, it's good that these things are all happening because these are all a sign that there is something bubbling underneath the surface that needs to be addressed. That's why these things are happening. If we didn't have these issues, we wouldn't be acting in these ways. But we are. As a whole, society has some issues we need to deal with. It's time that we start talking about these issues to resolve them instead of just ignoring the problems, because that's what we've done for so long. Don't talk about politics and religion because it's not good. It'll, you know, that's what the saying was, right? Well, for so long we've ignored those subjects, yet those are the biggest subjects that we have disagreements about. Isn't it time we put aside the disagreements with issues like politics to figure out the problems? Isn't it time we put aside the differences with religion, with racism, with all of the other problems in the world? Isn't it time we set aside our petty differences and just figure it out? And get over the fact that we're offended by certain things that others are saying and just listen and hear? Because maybe there's bits of truth coming from both sides. Usually that's how it works. And in these day and age, if we keep following the path we're following, it's not going to lead us to a place where we want to be as a whole. Because it's going to keep leading us into darker and darker places. When an event like 9/11 happens, and I keep going back to that because that was a pivotal event here in this country and for the world. When 9/11 happened, and it was told to the people as a lie, and then that lie went on and propagated wars, it's created so many problems throughout the world. If people just understood the truth of what happened, that it was a false flag event upon the American people, if they just did a proper investigation and understood really the dynamics at work, then they could start figuring out who is involved and start to see how that corruption is really still into play, in the mix. And if we know that the corruption is there, my guess is that because there are so many more good people down here on the planet than there are the bad ones, we could actually weed out that corruption and make the system a little bit better. Because the problem is there's too much corruption. We've allowed too many lies. We've accepted them. We have no one to blame except for ourselves. We've accepted the lies. We haven't stood up to them. We've accepted the darkness. We've accepted the cheating. We've accepted the war. We turn on the television and we watch the shows that glorify these things. It's our own fault. So the only one who can fix it is us. But we have to draw the line somewhere, and the line is a line of integrity. Where are we going to stop with all of the lies, and where are we going to have a new way of looking at things? And that's what we're trying to do. Now, Ron Paul, tying him in here, he's someone who represents part of this change for many of the people because he doesn't speak with the same voice as the others. Every week we play his report, so I'm going to play his weekly update right here so you can hear what he has to say. Here we go.
Hello, this is Ron Paul with your weekly update for November 14th. The global economic situation is becoming more dire every day. Approximately half of all U.S. banks have significant exposure to the debt crisis in Europe. Much more dangerous for the U.S. taxpayer is the dollar status as the reserve currency for the world and the U.S. Federal Reserve's status as the lender of last resort. As we've learned in recent disclosures, this has not only benefited companies like AIG, the auto industry, and various U.S. banks, but multiple foreign central banks as they have run into trouble. Nothing has been solved, however, by offering up the productivity of Americans as a sacrificial lamb. Greece is set to be the first domino to fall in the string of European economies at risk. Rather than learning from Greece's terrible example of an over-consuming public sector and drowning private sector, what is more likely from our politicians is an eventual bailout of European investors. The U.S. has a relatively small exposure to overwhelmed Greek banks, but much larger economies in Europe are set to follow, and that will have serious implications for the U.S. banks. Greece is technically small enough to bail out. Italy is not. Germany is not. France is not. It is estimated that U.S. banks have over $1 trillion tied up in risk German and French banks. Because the urge to paper over the debt with more credit is so strong, the collapse of the euro is imminent. Will the Fed be held responsible if the euro brings the U.S. dollar down with it? The most disingenuous aspect of the narrative about the European sovereign debt crisis is that entire economies will collapse if more resources are not bilked from productive people around the world. This is untrue. Tough times are coming for the banks, to be sure, but free people always find a way back to prosperity if the politicians leave them alone. Communities within Greece are coming together and forming barter systems because they know the euro is becoming unstable. Greeks are learning how to engage in commerce with each other without the use of fiat currency controlled by central banks. In other words, they are rediscovering what money really is, and they are trading with each other in ways that cannot be controlled, manipulated, squandered, inflated away, and generally ruined by corrupt bankers and the politicians that enable them. Farmers will still grow food, mechanics will still fix cars, people will still make things and exchange them with each other. No banker, no politician can stop that by destroying one medium of exchange. People will find or create another medium of exchange. Unfortunately, when politicians try to monopolize currency with legal tender laws, the people find it harder and harder to survive the inflation and taxation to which they are subjected. Bankers should take their dreaded haircut rather than making innocent people pay for their mistakes. The losses should be limited and liquidated rather than perpetuated and rewarded. This is the only way we can recover. Government debt is often considered rock solid because it is backed by a government's ability to forcibly extract interest payments out of the public. The public is increasingly unwilling to be built to make bankers whole. The riots and the violence in Greece should tell us something about the sustainability of the system. If we continue to bail out banks and bankers so they can continue to lose money, if we cavalierly put this burden on the taxpayer, it is all too predictable what will happen here. Thanks for calling this update. A new update is placed on this number, 888-322-1414, every Monday. The written text can be found on my website, www.house.gov/Paul, under the heading Texas Straight Talk. Thanks for calling.
All right. So, Ron Paul brings some different ideas than what the other politicians are bringing. Is he perfect? Probably not. None of them are. They all have their hands, dealing with so many issues. But we have to look and see who's standing on the best integrity. Ron Paul keeps talking about some principles that this country was founded on, like the Declaration, the Constitution, things of that nature. The others aren't doing those same things. The others want to keep going to war. Ron Paul keeps talking about not going to war. He makes sense to a lot of people. Ron wants to audit the Fed. Then you've got those who are thinking that that's a bad idea. Well, founding fathers have told us that we shouldn't allow the bankers in. We have presidents, like Andrew Jackson, who really made a point of getting the banks out, and then we allowed them back in after that. We've been warned, and yet we have a presidential candidate who used to work for the Fed and probably still has connections with the Fed. So we are doing all of the things that we've been told that we need to kind of pay attention to not doing. We're allowing these injustices to take place, and the more we do, the more they continue to happen. And then, you go out to the forums and you read all the things that people say. And I was reading one forum, and someone was trying to expose Ron Paul as being a bad guy, and they complained that people weren't watching the video. They were just saying, oh no, they didn't agree with it because of the title. I watched the video to see. The whole video, the one point that they brought their exposing part was because Ron Paul said he wanted to legalize marijuana. That's it? That's your big thing of exposing him? Well, marijuana, it's a plant that's been used on this planet for a long time, and it's not just for smoking. It's used for many, many other purposes. If it was used, it could actually be one of these plants that could actually help the economies of every single state through this country. As a matter of fact, the founding fathers used to have to grow it. The Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. The Constitution was written on it. The uniforms of the Revolutionary soldiers were sewed from the fibers of it. The American flag that Betsy Ross made was made out of it. On and on and on. Oils, fibers, clothes, many different things. There's hundreds of uses. And so, advocating what he's advocating, you got to listen deeper than just taking one little soundbite and trying to make it as a bad thing. You got to listen to the whole of what is being said. It's the only way you're going to figure things out. We can't just take the little snippets. Now, Occupy Wall Street, it's been going on for quite some time, and the NYPD have done a raid on Zuccotti Park. What kind of result is this going to have? Well, what kind of result usually goes on when you have some sort of authority pushing against people who don't want the authority to happen? Right, they push back. So that's what's going to end up happening with this situation. It's not resolved because instead of a conversation taking place, the powers that be are using violence and force against it. If there was just a conversation, that would help, but it's not going on. These people have been out there for a long time, but have anybody come out from Wall Street and said, okay, let's set up a round table, let's figure this out? No, there's never been anything official like that. They just watch the protesters and they say they have nothing to say. They've got plenty to say, they just don't want to hear it. And so instead, they send their goons out there, and by goons I mean the police officers, to go and take care of this. Now I know that there's those who think that what is going on with the Occupy movements are absolutely wrong. And maybe there's some parts that are. But what's going on with the police and the force that's being used, there's wrong stuff going on there as well. So both sides of the fence, there's problems. Again, it all boils down to there needs to be a conversation, but it's not being had. And so let's listen to what's going on out here.
Police have begun clearing out Occupy protester camps in New York. There are also claims that pepper spray is being used. The raid comes after activists vowed heightened action this coming Thursday to mark 2 months since the movement began. Let's talk to RT's Marina Portnight, who's in New York for us now. Marina, have the camps been removed?
Well, the evacuation, the surprise sweep of Occupy Wall Street headquarters in New York City is still ongoing. This surprise sweep began at 1 a.m. Tuesday morning. At that point, hundreds of police officers, some dressed in riot gear, descended on Zuccotti Park and presented the activists that have been camped out there with letters ordering them to temporarily evacuate the park. And the activists were told that all the tents were going to be removed by the police officers. Police claimed it was a health issue and that the park needed to be inspected. New York City Police Commissioner Ray Kelly was on scene for this episode as it unfolded. This is the first time the New York City Police Commissioner has been present as police officers and Occupy Wall Street activists have, been confronted face to face. This has been going on for 2 months, but clearly this is the pinnacle of all the tension that has been taking place in New York City for the past 8 weeks. The protesters were told that they would be allowed to return to the park, but not with their property. When the police proceeded with the evacuation, we saw tents being violently ripped down, ripped apart, removed from the park. The peaceful activists that were there, some were being dragged out of the park. There have been reports of pepper spray being used on the activists, many of whom sat down and refused to leave. There's also been reports of the police department using an LRAD machine to create enough of an inconvenience, the noise sound, to get the activists out of the park. Before the sweep took place, the police clearly had a plan because there were barricades put all around Zuccotti Park within a 4-block radius. And when members of the press were trying to get down to Zuccotti Park to access the event and see what was going on, to report about what was going on, many members of the press were not being allowed in.
And we understand that tents were also dismantled at a site in Oakland in California, and some 50 people were arrested in Portland. It looks like authorities are tightening the screws on the protests there.
That's right. This clearly looks not just like a New York City sweep, but a nationwide sweep of the Occupy camps that have settled in major cities throughout the United States. It looks like it may be a domino effect from one city to another, but New York City is the headquarters of this campaign, of this movement. But many do believe that the New York City Police Department are trying to get ahead of the game because, as you already mentioned, the Occupy Wall Street movement is planning major protests for Thursday. That's the 17th. That marks the 2-month anniversary of the Occupy movement, and major events will be taking place all day, including what organizers say will be an attempt to shut down the New York Stock Exchange. So as you can imagine, New York City officials are probably trying to preempt that, trying to avoid it, and if that means they're going to sweep the camp and try to make this inconvenient for activists to remain there throughout the winter without tents and without their property, that's clearly what city officials are trying to do.
Okay. You see the problem going on? There's no conversation taking place. They're just pushing against each other. What would it be like? Imagine what it would be like if you had Bloomberg came out and they set up a whole roundtable discussion. They brought the media out there and they really addressed issues. Imagine that, what that would be like. But they're not going to address the issues because they've got too much corruption going on. Because undoubtedly issues would come up that deal with Wall Street corruption. And we all know that that exists. Ideas would come up about what happened with 9/11 and the 9/11 cover-up and the need for a new investigation. And we all know that they don't want that to happen. Issues would come up about the Federal Reserve, and they don't want to talk about that because there's been corruption with that for a long time. So the conversation isn't going to happen, so they just used force to go in. Now, do you really think that this is the end of it? Do you? Of course it isn't. Because the psychology of people isn't to give up. They've settled in already. So they just look at this as another tactic, and they're going to come back even stronger. And more people are going to step up. There's more people than there are military or more police and governments. Way more people. And the people are stepping up, more and more. And it's going to continue to happen until the conversation goes on. Now, will the conversation happen before things get out of control? Probably not, because there's too much corruption in the political system, in the media, in the places that should be involved with the conversation. And until that time happens, well, we're just going to have to watch and see what goes on. But you'll be hearing more news about this. This wasn't the end, by any means. Now, one thing you're not hearing about in the mainstream anymore is Fukushima. Fukushima is really, really bad off, and it's been getting worse every day since it first happened all these months ago. This article here is from a Fukushima diary. It's called Escape Plan 1112. It says, I haven't trusted the government since I was born, but I totally quit listening to them on the evening of 3/11. I knew Reactor 3 had a nuclear explosion, not hydrogen explosion, on 4/25. I still can't find a word to express my feeling. It tasted like the mixture of grief, desperation, and rage. Rage made me write the blog. I couldn't help it. Internet was my only weapon. So it is natural for me to be under the surveillance. LOL. I received threats from those who should never know my address, etc. They also disturb me trying to find the truth. That's why I can no longer say where or when I'm going until I can win. I sometimes receive questions from people living out of Japan. I must go to Japan soon. Is it safe? What should I do? These are my answers. Japan is not safe. Don't go to Chiba or Saitama or further north. Tokyo is the border. Don't trust Geiger counter. Make the stay as short as possible. Do not drink tap water or milk. Don't eat Japanese food. Eat only imported food. Never eat sushi. Wear a mask when you have to go out. Narita Airport is in Chiba, where is in the hot spot that you know will be exposed to the extent. Don't touch soil, grass, and the rain. Don't sit down outside, especially when it's windy. Pollen of 50,000 to 70,000 BQs will fly from February to April. Do not come to Japan then. Also, I sometimes receive messages to tell some of my articles are too emotional, have less basis. Let me explain. I'm under their surveillance. I can't post everything I know. When you find it too emotional, please read between the lines. I'm trying to balance with emotion instead of facts that I'm not allowed to tell. And I take it as a rule to publish all the comments you post. I even publish religious comments, LOL, but I don't post too meaningless ones, such as, you're an idiot. Now, go on. There's the rest of the article there. There's a problem, and this is the feelings coming out of there from someone who's in the midst of it. The mainstream should be talking about this. These are issues we should be dealing with, because these are issues of the world that are also of a concern. Because when the nuclear stuff gets in the air, it doesn't just stay situated in one area, it spreads around the globe to everyone. It becomes a nuclear problem for everyone, not just those in Japan. So, what are we going to do with all this? That's the big question. What's really taking place? You know, there's a lot of fear in the world. A lot of fear. And that's at the heart of the matter. Fear of what's going to happen. A lot of people think that we're coming to the end because they got this phrase, the end of time, from the Mayans. And there are those who think that the Mayans are bringing forth a prophecy of doom that's coming to our planet, that they are actually calling it in with their prophecies. And there are those who see that the prophecies are not calling it in, but just saying this is what's going on. There are those who are concerned about, all kind of issues that are taking place in this planet that are going to change our lives drastically. And, some of these fears are definitely, again, they need to be addressed. There's a big conversation that needs to take place amongst people in the world. One of the things, the Maya, the term itself means illusion. Well, what is the illusion? Let's look at what the Mayans talked about. They talked about a great change. They talked about the end of time. They didn't talk about the end of the world. The end of time. Time as in how we look at the nature of time or moving into another timing frequency is the whole idea. The illusion that we are in a time that is not the actual time we should be in. So there's more than meets the eye. But then there's the illusion of when they talk about, when people say that there's the doom and gloom that the Mayans are talking about, that we're all going to die. Well, is that real? I mean, if we die, so what? Because didn't Jesus come to show us that we rise above that? So if that's the case, then the whole idea of the death is just an illusion. It's just another doorway to go into the next phase of where we need to be. So there's a lot more than meets the eye. And the biggest issues we have out there to deal with are the fears of what's going on, the fear of the unknown. And as you pay attention to the events that are taking place in politics, on Wall Street, with the police, with the psychology of people, you will see over and over the same theme: fear. We need to get past the fear, and the way we get past the fear is through love. That has been the one universal constant. It's what Jesus talked about. It's what Buddha talked about. It's what the enlightened masters of the planet talked about love. We don't put that out as the main thing. People share love and express it, but we don't have that same view and that same energy being expressed from places like Wall Street. Would you say Wall Street is loving the people? Would you say the political arena is loving the people? No. There's no love in these things, and there needs to be. They've removed God from the mixture as well. And you can't take God out of the mixture, because once you do that, then the whole system falls apart, because it is not based on anything other than a mankind idea. And that's not accurate. So we need to look at the ideas of fear and the psychology of really what's going on in the world, because it's not about the events. It's about the fears behind what these events mean to others. And if we can understand that, that will help us a lot. We need to have a conversation, all of us. It's very important. Now, I'm going to play this for you. This one is 7 minutes long. We're going to play this, and then I'm going to go into our meditation afterwards. This is Krishnamurti, and he's talking about the origin of fear. And this is very insightful. I think you'll get a lot out of this. So let me jump over to that and see what you think.
What is the origin of fear? Whether the mind, the psychological state, can ever be free totally, completely from fear. Not say is it possible or it's not possible. If you say both, either one or the other, that conditions your own state of inquiry. But if there is the intelligent demand, whether the mind, whether a human being, his psyche, his consciousness, can ever be free, completely, not partially, not one day free of fear, the next day full of fear. But the entire movement of fear, conscious as well as deeply rooted fear, whether it's possible for the human mind to be utterly free of it. Because fear is one of the factors of disorder. Not only desire, but also fear. Most human beings are afraid, either physical fears and psychological, complicated fears. Fears of not fulfilling, fears of not becoming, fears of in their relationship, fears of not having jobs, especially now in this country there are 10 million people unemployed, fear of darkness, fear of death, fear of the very act of living. There's so many, many forms of fear. And naturally, as one observes fear, the state of fear, as one goes into it, you can see how fear creates disorder. Fear of being secure and not being secure. Fear of the past, fear of the present, fear of the future. As we all know, most of us have experienced some kind of fear or not. Urgently, very deeply, or superficially. When one is afraid, the whole psychological state becomes tightened, strained, you know all that. And where there is fear, there is darkness and escape from the darkness. Then the escape becomes far more important than the fear itself. But fear always remains. So one asks why human beings who have lived on this earth for millions of years, who are technologically intelligent, why they have not applied their intelligence to be free from this very complex problem of fear. That may be one of the reasons for war, for killing each other. And religions throughout the world have not solved the problem. Neither gurus, not the saviors, not ideals. So it is very clear, no outside agency, however elevated, however made popular by propaganda, no outside agency can ever possibly solve this problem of human fear. So we must find out again, if one may repeat, you are inquiring, you are investigating, you are delving into the whole problem of fear. The speaker may not only explain, but the explanation has no value unless you yourself go in deeply into this question. And perhaps we have so accepted the pattern of fear that we don't want even to move away from it. So, what is fear? What are the contributory factors that bring about fear? Like many small streams, rivulets that make the tremendous volume of a river. So what are the small streams that bring about fear, that have such tremendous vitality of fear.
Okay, now you're going to want to know what are those things. Well, I'm going to play the rest of this clip perhaps tomorrow so that you can get a sense of that. But, you know, fear. It's something that we've all had to deal with one time or another, and if we can just get past it, imagine what we could do. Fear is what keeps us from having a conversation. But I keep going back to that because that's what we need to have. A conversation. The world, we need to discuss to figure out our problems. And if we can discuss, we can figure out the problems. One of the things I enjoy about the show is that I get emails all the time. And people are expressing different ideas and thoughts. Some I've heard of, some I haven't. And we trade back and forth. We have a conversation. I try to stay as open-minded as possible, and I know that I don't believe everything that is sent to me just as much as I know that things I send back aren't believed by others as well. And that's okay, because in our understandings and going back and forth, we learn to appreciate some of the things that are out there in the world and the way that we look at things. And by looking at understanding the different principles and things we're all working with, it helps us to understand more of the problems that are going on, because it's all psychological. We can all figure this out. We can all come to a common understanding of how things really go, because things operate one way or the other. It's not like things always do. Life operates in one simple way. And if you know the way it operates, if you can get past all of the lies and illusions about how you think it operates, and you get to the point of it, and people can figure it out because maybe one person has a piece of the puzzle and another one has a piece of the puzzle. You do these things, you figure it out, things become a little bit better. So I just encourage the conversations that need to happen in life, because there's so many issues that we need to deal with. So let's look at the idea of fear now in the meditation we're going to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and close your eyes and relax. And let's just imagine that we are in a pool, a large swimming pool. And as you are floating in that swimming pool, the area where you are, let's imagine you're on a raft, floating in an area. And you feel safe and comfortable there in the raft. Yet all around you, in the pool, you feel that there's this dark energy closing in on you there, floating in the middle of the pool on your raft. And this dark energy, it makes you fearful. Fearful that you're going to fall off the raft into the water. Fearful that you might drown. Fearful because you don't think you know how to swim. Fearful because you won't be able to handle what is coming your way. The fears just flood your mind. But in the midst of all of those fears, you see within yourself that there's a light that does not go out. And as you focus on that light, and that light is love, as you focus on that place of love within you, and you let it grow, the fear dissipates. Because in the presence of love, fear disappears. And as you keep shining that love outward, the fear becomes less and less. And the darkness in the water that represents the fear goes away. And the water becomes clear. And now imagine being out there walking in life, and instead of seeing a pool of water, life is like the pool, and the people are like the water. And sometimes there's clarity in the water, but sometimes there's darkness as people carry fears. And you see how the fear gets carried from person to person like a virus. But just imagine, as you did in the pool by sending out love, how the fear dissipated. Imagine how doing the same thing now amongst the people changes. And the darkness dissipates and the fear goes away. And the love spreads from one person to another. And as another person is touched by love, they remember the love within them that allows that light to shine bright. And as the love shines from them, the next person becomes affected by that love. And so on, till pretty soon, all of the fears are gone. And without the fear, there is peace. There is community. There is family, brotherhood, sisterhood, cooperation, truthfulness. And standing in that place of love and understanding how fears are just an illusion to keep us from seeing the love, we have compassion. Compassion for the fears that people have. And we understand how we can all help each other by sending love to somebody who might not be able to have that strength on their own, but maybe needs a little encouragement from somebody. And just by sending a little bit of love their way, it encourages them to allow the love within them to grow. And as we have compassion for everyone around, we understand that the darkness and the evil is not darkness and evil in and of itself, but it's just fear that has closed others off from the true greatness of God. So let's just imagine now sending out love all around the planet to each and every individual. And just see the fear being dissipated. Imagine the earth smiling, and send this love upwards into the cosmos, and imagine this cosmos smiling down upon you as well. And just imagine the world living without fear. And hold that thought in your heart today. And spread that message with others today. You can just be silently, energetically. But let's all imagine what the world would be like if we did not have fear. How we would soar. For God gave us a strength, a courage to rise above all of these things. It's our true nature. It is what we are about. And it's easier to get and step away from than you could possibly imagine. So hold that love in your heart, my friends, and with that, let's bring our energy and attention back to the present moment. And we'll do so on the count of 3. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. 2, coming back to the present moment filled with faith. and one, coming back to the present moment, happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. And there you have it. That's our show, that's our prayer, that's our meditation for today. Go out into the world, my friends, and just share love. And just keep imagining a world without fear. Spread that message, spread that word. Let's see what happens if that seed grows. Because if we could get without fears, if we could step beyond that, imagine what we truly might be able to discover in the world. Imagine the conversations we might have and the problems that we might solve. It's not so difficult. It's actually much easier than anybody could possibly imagine. All it takes is the first step, and the first step is just love. That's all. Just love. For Dirk Bradshaw, my name's Josh Poet. It's been a pleasure as always. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and information. Till then, be safe and have fun. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.